to the Thought Snob Podcast. I'm Paula Swope. Let's get snobby. This week's episode of the Thought Snob Podcast is way different than anything we've done up until now. Totally switching up the format. Going to try a little something new because my husband Will seems to think that you guys don't ever see the authentic Paula. You see this polished version, and a lot of the conversations have been scripted in the past. Not all of them, but some of them have been, and some of them I do think about quite a bit beforehand and have, answers up here. And so he seems to think that we need to do a little more impromptu. And I suggested a few nights ago that he let him give me a topic, and me knowing not a clue as to what it's going to be, no scripts, no nothing. I don't even know the topic or the question. And then I just talk about it. No preparation, no censoring, and that's another thing. I have censored a lot of the conversations for a lot of reasons, to keep from offending people that I care about and all sorts of things. So he's going to give me a question or a topic. I have no idea what it is. He's going to do that right now. So let's see what it is.
One theme seems to weave its way through a lot of your episodes, a lot of your guests, and that is past emotional, physical traumas. And I know this is a very complex topic, and there are levels and all of that, but I've heard you talk before about some techniques to help release some of those traumas, some techniques to help you get control of your emotions when just the thoughts of those traumas become overwhelming. And I think a lot of your listeners have also, and viewers have also experienced those past traumas and maybe having trouble getting past them. So I'd love to hear what you've got to say today.
Okay, well, yeah, you just dived right in there. So yeah, it is a complex topic, and I'll start off by saying I had no idea what I associated the word trauma with physical trauma. I had no idea that there was a such thing as emotional trauma. That's how uninformed and ignorant I was when I first got into doing all of this inner work. And I was in my late 20s, and I started taking a deep dive into who I was instead of who everybody had told me that I was. And what I found was I really wasn't any of those things that I had been told that I was. And one of the things that I stumbled across during that journey that I had to face head on was I learned that I had emotional trauma, and everybody has trauma. There are levels of trauma. There are micro traumas. For example, a micro trauma would be losing a job, a breakup, a fight with a friend, maybe something. Maybe you fell down in public and you were humiliated by that. Those are micro traumas. And if you just keep on operating on like autopilot, then they accumulate. And they will come to the surface. Those traumas will come to the surface, and they will surface. It's very sneaky. It's kind of like grief. They'll show up when you least expect it. Now, there are micro traumas, and then there are, those big episodes, man. I mean, that really just alter your whole existence. I mean, people go through horrific abuse, sexual abuse, fighting in wars. Um, my parents, when they got divorced, that was a little more than a micro trauma. I really think that my mother and I left that situation with PTSD, and I had no freaking knowledge of it. And no one ever said the word trauma to me. I associated that word with physical trauma. And when I was in, I don't know, maybe my early 30s, I saw this body talk specialist. And I don't even really know what I was exploring at that time. I was just trying to get my hands on everything I could to do this inner work and figure out who I was and, get rid of all this crap that I had going on in my subconscious. And she asked me about trauma throughout my lifetime, and I immediately started talking about a car accident that I was in when I was 16 years old. And I started talking about how my head went forward and, physical trauma. And she said, "Oh, no, no, no." She said, "I need to know about that too, yeah, but I'm talking about emotional trauma." And I remember going, "Huh, emotional trauma." And I said, "Well, I don't think I have any emotional trauma." And I can only imagine what she thought. And I honestly don't remember what I said in that moment. But I think the next person that I talked to about it was Dr. Harmon, and Dr. Harmon was, an AK chiropractor that I saw in my hometown. AK stands for Applied Kinesiology. He wasn't your average cracker and popper. Dr. Harmon was really, really something. I miss him a lot. But I remember I think he was the next person I talked to about that, and Dr. Harmon was like, "Oh my god, Paula, you have got so much emo emotional trauma. It goes back to, before, you were I in the it was goes when you were in the womb, like, everything that has gone on with your family and your ancestors, and, you have so much emotional trauma. The relationship that you've been in, there's been so much emotional trauma." And he broke it down to me in a way that I could understand it, and moving forward, I realized how much emotional trauma that I had. But I made a mistake when I first started confronting it, because I started trying to make changes by just jumping in and forgiving, all these people that I was pissed off at. Well, you can't ever make real changes starting externally. It has to come from within. I mean, you gotta start with yourself first. That's all there is to it. And, the changes that I needed to make and the trauma that I needed to release were things that were gonna start in here, and things that I had to accept, and things I had to admit, and things that I had to a lot of things I had to revisit and take responsibility for the role that I played and all that bullshit. Because although sometimes the situations that I was in that caused the trauma weren't fair, I was front row fucking Joe. I mean, I was there for it. Give me more. I mean, if there was an abusive person within a 50-foot radius, I'd go straight for them and befriend them or whatever. It was just ridiculous, but that is a trauma response. So the way that I successfully tackled the bulk of the trauma, and it's an ongoing process. I mean, none of us are a fixed or a finished product. It's ongoing because it's life. I mean, those traumas are still gonna happen, and you can't downplay them either. Don't there are levels of trauma, but what humiliates me may not humiliate the next person, and vice versa. And we're all freaking different, and that's where observations are okay, judgments aren't, assumptions are never fucking okay. Just stop with the assumptions already. You cannot judge a book by its cover. That said, I started to revisit a lot of the things that had happened in the past. and really thinking about those experiences through just really a more objective lens. Like, let's look at the facts. Let's look at the facts here. And as I looked at the facts and I sorted through the fiction, which was the those that meaning making that my brain, that we've got a meaning making algorithm. We will make meaning out of all sorts of things, and that meaning 9 times out of 10 isn't true. And so I sorted through a lot of the things that I thought that I had developed trauma from. And I started trying to forgive all these people that I was really pissed off at, and blaming them for the things that had happened. And I realized I've got to forgive myself before I can forgive anybody. And that was a process.
But what were you forgiving yourself for when it comes to the trauma that was inflicted upon you?
My reaction to the things that happened. I was the world's worst with reacting. I thought everything deserved a response. And when someone did something that I perceived as being wrong or disrespectful, or something that put me in a vulnerable position, by God, I acted out. I mean, I reacted. Um, for instance, uh, when my parents were going through their divorce, it was really brutal, and I was 18. I mean, their divorce really started before that, but I was 18, at like the peak of it. And my mother and I moved out of the house, and a week later, another woman and her daughter moved in. Well, I wasn't real nice to those women, and I sure wasn't nice to my father. And I vandalized shit, and stalked and seized every opportunity I could to slander them as public as I possibly could. And all while binge drinking, uh, just blackout freaking drunk. And that left me with a lot of humiliation trauma, a lot of regret, a lot of useless guilt. Guilt is a made up emotion, but a lot of shame. And what I had to come to terms with to release that trauma was to look at facts. Because, yeah, I had been thrown into a really, really nasty, abusive, cruel, narcissistic fueled situation. But my reaction is what caused the pain and the suffering. If I would have reacted differently and acted like I had some sense, then I could have cut down on a lot of that trauma.
Okay, so once you got through that process of forgiving yourself, and now how long did that take?
10 years.
10 years just to fully forgive yourself. We're not even talking about forgiving the other people involved. We're just talking about just forgiving yourself. 10 years.
And it wasn't just me forgiving. Okay, I'm going to forgive myself. Then I'm going to forgive person A, B, C, D, E, F, G. I mean, it's like a snowball effect. Once you forgive yourself, then you've released so much emotional trauma, and you have released so many heavy emotions. and you have chipped away at your ego so much that by the time you get to, the other people, it's almost been happening simultaneously. So once you forgive yourself, then it's a ripple effect, and it's not nearly as difficult. Like when I became more emotionally intelligent, emotionally secure, released a lot of those heavy emotions, then when I started thinking about the other people that were involved, I found that the hatred and the anger had lifted, and I was able to look at them more as teachers than outright villains. Whereas before that, I was a victim, they were the villain, there was no black and white, that's all there was to it. They fucked me over and was pissed about it, and they needed to pay for it, I needed to get revenge, and it was all bullshit, and I was just this innocent person that was just treated horribly. That's not the case. It wasn't the case at all.
Did you do something on a daily basis, or was there some kind of practice you had uh,
Yeah.
in order to forgive yourself?
Yeah, I mean, meditation is like magic. And meditation, if you just meditate, and this worked for me. I'm not saying that it will work for everybody, because everybody's different. Everybody's brains operate differently. There are mental health conditions that can interfere. But I feel pretty confident in saying that for the most part, if you take on a meditation practice and you're consistent with it, it's like magic happens. It's like solutions to problems naturally emerge without you really having to put forth a whole lot of effort. And that is absolutely what happened with me. I started meditating every day. It was meditating my head off. And then I visualized a lot about how I wanted situations to be. And what you do when you get out of the noise and you go to the silence, that's where you tap in to, that's the only way you can tap in to your highest self, who you truly are. We at the Chopra Center, when you transcend all thought and awareness and you reach that higher level of consciousness, that's where the field of infinite possibilities are, and you can't access that any other way except with meditation. And meditation did more for me than I could ever describe. And I was able to, because I was meditating so much, I was releasing so much stress. I was releasing so much accumulated stress. I was releasing so much chronic stress. And a major benefit of that is racing thoughts subside. And a person who has racing thoughts, there's no way that they're ever going to see any peace. There's no way they're ever going to be truly happy, much, much less experience any type of sustainable joy. Those racing thoughts will drive you mad. They are at the very core of worrying. Worrying is a really dangerous thing to do, because it's the same thing as praying for what you don't want. When you can make those racing thoughts subside, then you're not going to be as anxious. When you have anxiety, you don't think straight. You don't process information the right way. Your brain makes meaning of things that are not true. So when I started meditating, it really put me in check like nothing ever had before. And I was able to manage my emotions healthfully. And I've said this before, I mean, that's the key to happiness. There's no secret. The key to happiness is learning to manage your emotions healthily. So it can be very difficult to do that if you are weighed down and bombarded with trauma and have no awareness of it. And if you have no awareness of it, then you probably have a lot of bad habits. You probably operate mindlessly. You probably react. And that is just a big old recipe for another trauma.
You have mentioned on multiple occasions to me mirror work. There was something you did specifically around forgiveness with mirror work. Do you mind briefly touching on that?
Well, mirror work is pretty tough, and I learned it from, I think, Louise Hay. I think Louise Hay was the first person maybe that I heard about mirror work.
How far were you into your emotional recovery journey, or however you want to word
Fresh,
it, when you started doing that?
fresh. Yeah, I mean, it was early on.
Okay.
And I mean, I cringed. Um, I'm not I mean, I've used mirror work with so many different things. But I actually think the first the first time that I used mirror work was with the positive affirmation, I am wealthy, because I went into this whole self-empowerment journey, spiritual journey, inner work, soul journey, whatever you want to call it, pretty naive, pretty uninformed, pretty ignorant about the whole thing. And I was trying to manifest money. Like, I thought that money was going to get me out of the situation that I was in. And that's all that I needed was money. And so I was just looking surface level, superficial, petty, tangible. And that's where I started, because I remember vividly standing in that little bitty tiny bathroom in the house that mother and I lived in. And I looked in the mirror and I said, I'm wealthy. And I could barely look at myself. Like, I could barely say it. I could barely get it out. And I remember going, oh my God, because it was more than I could bear. I just mirror work is tough. And then I started, as I got more confident and more advanced and more ready for change. I thought I was ready for change when I first started this, and I was to a certain extent, but I wasn't, like, I had my toes in the water. I hadn't completely dived in. But when I completely just dove in, um, I remember having a tough time with mirror work and looking in the mirror and saying things like, "You are lovable," because it was a belief that I had adopted from my parents' divorce. Because being replaced by so many different, step siblings, all girls, being replaced, well, there was one boy, but that kinda didn't count because my father really couldn't stand him. But the girls, it's I was replaced. And, when a narcissistic person loves you, or sorry, let me rephrase that. When you're at the top of their list, they shower you with attention. They shower you with what you think is love when it's actually not. And they can jerk it away as quickly as they bring it, and it will make your head spin. And if you aren't narcissistic and you have genuine feelings for people, then you don't adjust to that right away. And when he replaced me with all of those different people, then I thought, well, I'm not lovable. I'm just not. And I believed that for a really long time. And it showed in every aspect of my life, in all of my relationships, platonic, intimate, professional, all of it, family relationships. And that belief controlled my behaviors, and it was really deeply embedded in there. And so when I started doing the inner work, and yeah, mirror work was part of that. And I just started looking in the mirror, saying things about myself that I hadn't said before. And it was excruciatingly painful. Um, but I kept on with it. I mean, that's how you release trauma. I mean, that's how you do any of this. That's how you make, and this is how you make changes. You have to be consistent. It's like the repetitiveness of doing these practices every single day. Meditation, mirror work, your affirmations, whatever it is that you're doing. It's the repetitiveness that produces those cumulative effects. It's like building a muscle. If you want to build muscle, then you gotta exercise, you gotta lift weights, and if you do that, then that muscle's gonna get stronger. It's the exact same concept with any of these um, methods that I teach.
So, again, I wanna just lastly, um, just get into just one more time how long this process took. So, how old were you when you started this process, and how long did it take you to become what you would consider even moderately emotionally intelligent?
From the ages of 28 years old to 38 years old, I made the most, um, mm, how should I describe that? Um, that's when I crossed over into another lane. During that 10-year period, that's when I had realizations. That's when I developed awareness. During that 10-year period, that's when I made the biggest changes emotionally, physically, um, cutting people out. 10 years. At 38 years old, I had some residual going on, but I had forgiven myself, but that brought such a great awareness that led to cutting more people out, and it was at 38 when I made the biggest cuts, and so that left me with a lot more work to do. It stirred up more trauma, because with every severing of every tie of every person, there were bitter fights, arguments. You witnessed some of those. Those bring trauma, and you've got to deal with it. And I did, and I did. I didn't bury it. I didn't put it to the side. I didn't put it on the back burner. I dealt with it. And sometimes dealing with it was letting the anger out. I don't let it build. Sometimes it was venting. Sometimes it was crying. But it was always meditating, no matter what. So after 38, I moving toward 40, 41, 42, 43. During those years, I was coming into who I've been over the past year, and I wasn't exactly sure what was going on because my personality changed quite a bit, but it was because I lost the urge to react to almost anything. And that kinda threw me for a loop a bit, and I really didn't know what to do with it because I was like, "Am I losing my spunk or, what's going on here?" And it was hard for me to almost accept that peaceful, easy feeling because it was a total opposite of what I had been used to my entire life. I mean, during those years, it was the first time I felt like I wasn't in fight, flight, freeze all the time, no matter what happened. I did not really react or fall apart. And I can think of 5 things off the top of my head right now that happened during that time that would have typically I would have been able to have dealt with it emotionally. I would have lost my shit, and I didn't. And so getting through all of that, I'm right now, I would say, I mean, better than I've ever been. And I've been where I'm at right now for about a year or so. So 20 years? Does that answer your
Wow.
question?
Yes. Yes. And, I think too many people on social media um, make it sound like it's just so easy and all you have to do is say some magic words every day. And I just want people to really understand from someone who, in your words, has gone from havoc to happiness, someone who really has done the work, um, how difficult it can be, but also how worthwhile it is. And I'm really glad that you opened up today about some of those things, and I hope that your listeners and viewers liked it too. Um, and on that, I'm going to ask everybody to please subscribe. Uh, Please leave us comments. If you're watching this on YouTube, we would love to hear some of your comments. Tell us about your journey. You never know, we may read some of those comments on the podcast. We'll see you guys next week.
Bye.
The Thought Snob Podcast with Paula Swope has been brought to you by Thought Snob Media in association with Special Purpose Studios. All production, mixing, and sound engineering by me, Will Swope. We hope you've enjoyed this podcast. Please take a few seconds to give us 5 stars and leave a review. See you on the next Thought Snob Podcast with Paula Swope.